Hello, everyone. This is Cody Lee of BlackCatBooks.org, author of Eye of the Dragon, Cruel and Beautiful Rabbit Hole, Lore and Fray, and the upcoming Jaw of the Dragon. I do think we need to acknowledge something about the gaming year 2023 because, on one hand, I, as a Nintendo fan, am really enjoying myself and thinking this is one of the best years ever, and just having playing a lot of great games. But when it comes to like the casual audiences, when it comes to like the general demographics, I am noticing a very interesting shift. Something that I think a lot of people have not picked up on. I have not seen a lot of people mention this at all, but I think it really needs to be said. What are the most popular games of 2023 so far? Dead Space Remastered, Metroid Prime Remastered, and Resident Evil 4 Remake. Have you notice anything about any of these games? Do you notice anything about these specific titles, like these specific releases, like these specific games? They are all mid 2000s games remade for the modern audiences. In the case of like Metroid Prime, there wasn't really much you needed to do to like modernize it because it was already like a pretty forward thinking game. But like, when you look at like Dead Space, when you look at like Resident Evil 4 Remake, like, the elements that made those games popular, the design decisions, the visual design, like the general gameplay, like a lot of that has carried over into the modern remastered versions. And even if like they're worse than they were before, even if they're like downplayed, even if like they mess something up, like they are still better than the things they're making today, right? They're better than like Forspoken, right? They're better than like Hogwarts Legacy. They're better than Elden Ring, right? When you get right down to it, games in the 2000s were obviously better than the things we get now. Like the era of like the modern gaming thing. That's been brought about by games like Uncharted and The Last of Us. I think The Last of Us is like the true like quintessential like modern game. That's just garbage. Uh, if you really like think about it in any meaningful capacity, like you'll realize that like games in the mid 2000s, like although they were like technically demanding and like really really took major steps to evolve from like previous generations, like they still really were still at their core games, right? Resident Evil 4 like is fully voice acting. It does have a plot. It does have like things that happen. It does have like interesting cinematography. It does have like elements, quick time events. But like when you get down to it, like the game is still a masterpiece. The game is still a 10 out of 10, like way better than anything that's come out since then. Gears of War and Dead Space were both ripped it off pretty heavily, and like both were inferior titles. And like going forward, like we saw those franchises get worse and worse and worse as they became increasingly modernized, as they became increasingly plot focused and more interested in like tricking people into like buying their games and not actually playing them than actually being like fun, interesting, unique, memorable experiences. Gaming in the mid 2000s was better than it was today. Just like how gaming in the 90s was better than it was in the mid 2000s. Like it cannot be denied, right, that people preferred games back then. The games back then were better than the stuff we're getting now. And I think we're getting to the point where even like casual audiences, people who maybe even play like 1, 2, 3 games a year, are starting to catch on to that reality. Like games like Dead Space, games like Resident Evil 4 Remake, like games like Metroid Prime, they would not have caught on otherwise. People are appreciating and valuing these games for the creativity and the variety they bring to modern gaming, which is always just walking down a straight hallway while characters just talk to each other, right? Like in The Last of Us, right? Gaming in the mid 2000s was simply better than what we get today. And the popularity of these remasters and remakes proves that.